Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about Trump fixing the border crisis, okay? So he said he's going to fix it on day one through executive order, which I know he's going to do, okay? But that's not enough. He knows it. I'm going to go through some, additional ideas. The reason why the executive order isn't enough is it has to be codified, meaning it has to go through Congress, both houses, him sign it, because number one, he needs funding. Number two, it has to be something that is binding even on leftist Democrats. So he'll get less resistance from Democrats if it goes through Congress. Number three, it will also be binding on future presidents. So even if we get some type of a Biden or Kamala in the future, if it's codified into law now, future presidents will be bound by it. Okay, so before I go into some details into the detail of some ideas that I've got here, I want you guys to know that both of my parents migrated into the United States in the late 1960s. Okay, so and I have numerous aunts, uncles. Have basically all my family migrated into the United States. I was born here, but for the most part, my family all support, fixing this migration problem. Okay, two reasons. Number one, it's not fair to them, right, who had to come here legally, go through, jump through a whole bunch of hoops in order to become American citizens, right? It's not fair to them if these new people coming in, just freely walk in and don't have to go through the same effort. And number two, us looking at it, okay, all these additional people coming in are competitors, okay? These are more people that are trying to, take away work from us and that sort of stuff. And this is really no difference than, if I have a Thanksgiving dinner where I invite 10 family members, right? And we're planning to all fill up our plate and eat, and all of a sudden I've got 5 additional family members that show up that were not invited, that now show up and expect to share in our food. Well, my plate is no longer going to get full. Okay, now you might say, hey, why am I worried about filling up my plate? I mean, obviously I'm pretty well fed, but you know what? I want to have a feast. I want to fill up my plate and I want to eat good. Okay, I don't want to share with those people that showed up uninvited, even if they're my own family members. So that's how, I just want to give you guys an insight into how a lot of us that are recently arrived, again, I was born here, but I have family that was recently arrived, look at this migrant situation. These people coming in are competitors, and we don't want them here, okay? So just, I just wanted to kind of put that out there so you know where I'm coming from. So let's talk about some things that we got to do here. Now is the best time, right? In the first 6 months of Trump getting into office is the best time to pass some real immigration reform. Okay, so the first thing we gotta do is the remain in Mexico policy. That's gotta be made law. Okay, again, so that a future president can't decide to do something different. Okay, that's gotta be made into law. Number two, completing the border wall, right, and maintaining it. That's gotta be made law. And number three, mass deportation. Okay. That's got to be put into law. Now, there's provisions already in there for deporting people, but that needs funding. There's things that can be done to help facilitate that, to make that more efficient. So that has to be, basically that needs to be updated and codified into law. And essentially, it's got to bind future presidents so that they have to do it, okay? So that, for example, if ICE says that, hey, we got a bunch of people here, we're going to deport them, the future administration can't say, no, hold up, don't do that. They're going to say, hey, what do you mean don't do it? It's law. We have to do it. So that's the position that we want to put. That's the situation that we want to create, where the people in charge of deporting people have to deport. Okay. Right. So. Now, those 3 ideas have been floated by other people, but I got a new idea for us here. Shifting government personnel. Okay, so if you go to Washington, right, or the areas around Washington, Washington, D.C., you're going to see that there's lots of these government buildings that are full of people that do very little work. Okay, they spend a good part of the day like looking at their phones or typing on keyboards. So what we got to do is we got to shift a lot of those people out of Washington D.C. Into places where work needs to be done. Okay, so they got to be shifted, to the southern border. Okay, even if that means having them, stand in the line across the southern border, looking southward. That's better than them sitting in an office in Washington D.C. Okay, or moving them to these areas in New York City or Los Angeles where they have these migrant city tents, right? Where you have where all these migrants accumulate. Get them over there and let them start dealing with the people over there, right? Let them do something useful. So this is an important part. You gotta get these people out of Washington D.C., get them out of these soft, cushy jobs that they have, get them to do some real work. And hey, you know what? If they quit, they quit. But yeah, we got way too many people in Washington, these bureaucrats that are just not producing anything. And I'm talking FBI, CIA, ATF. FDA, EPA, all these people, man. We gotta get them working. Basically, get them in these areas where we got these migrants. They say that there's not enough people to help process them. Well, we got plenty of people to process them. We just gotta move them to that area. I'm going to talk about this in a future video, but also areas like Chicago, right? High crime areas, right? That's also another, we got all these extra people in Washington, D.C., right, that are on the government payroll not doing anything. Move them to Chicago, right? Get them working over there. All right, so next, military, okay? For some crazy reason that I cannot understand, it is not the military's primary responsibility to guard our border, okay? So that makes absolutely no sense to me. So the way I see this, we need to codify it into law that it is the military's primary responsibility to guard the southern border. Okay, so they're basically guarding people that are trying to come in. Once they get in, then Border Patrol can deal with them. But that has to be a responsibility, a primary responsibility of the military, guarding the southern border. Okay, and what needs to happen is what we need to codify into law is that the president is fully authorized to use the military in whatever way he needs to protect the southern border. Okay, even if the cartels on the other side of the border are a problem, he has to have authorization to send the military to the other side of the border into Mexico to take care of the cartels. Now, just because he has that authorization doesn't mean that he immediately has to use it, okay? But this will certainly put a lot of pressure on the Mexican government to take care of their own problem, because if they don't take care of their own problem with the cartels, the president is in a position to say, hey, listen, I already am pre-authorized to use the military in any way I need to, so you better take care of this cartel problem that you got, okay? So this creates the right kind of pressure to get things fixed in Mexico. Okay, so let's see. Okay, let's talk about sanctuary cities. Okay, so my understanding of sanctuary cities is that it prevents. It's laws put in place to prevent the local law enforcement, the local police, from interacting with, let's say, Border Patrol and ICE, and working together with them to basically deport people. Okay, it prevents that exchange of information. So this is something that we gotta be careful of, because what we don't want is a situation where, let's say, the local governments, right, are compelled to work with, let's say, an ATF type of agency to enforce unconstitutional gun control laws. So we gotta be careful with that. And the Supreme Court has already said that that the states and cities cannot be compelled to do the federal government's work. Okay, so I think the best way to approach this is to make it legal, right, for the federal government to withhold funding from states and cities that do not cooperate with them. Okay, and the reason why that works is because the rural areas, right, in gun country, they're less dependent on government funding. So if some future president were to try and, you know, put that type of a pressure on the rural state, right, to, you know, to enforce unconstitutional gun control laws, that's not going to hurt the rural states as much, right? Whereas with the, you know, the urban, the states like New York and California that are heavily dependent on government funding, that's going to hurt them a lot more. So that's where I would attack these sanctuary cities. I would attack them from the funding side. But just, you know, I just want to put that out there. We got to be careful that we don't end up, you know, hurting ourselves in the long run. Okay. But yeah, it definitely 100%. I mean, that should be handled up here from the mass deportation. We need laws in place that will facilitate mass deportation, and we gotta move these people out of here fast. Okay. So how do we move them out fast? Okay. So really important. Let's take away some of the incentives for them to be here. Okay. So in a lot of places, like in New York City right now, right, they're getting, I heard, like $350 a week from in welfare, right? So cut off any federal funding for feeding them, for housing them, all right? And also, so that's the first thing. Cut off any federal funding, okay, for supporting people that are illegally here. Make it illegal to facilitate this, right? So if, let's say, a person is filling out a welfare form for somebody that they know is here illegally, you know, that person has also now broken the law. Okay, so you know that's got to be cut out. Employers. Okay, we also got to attack it from the because we want to cut off the federal funding, so they're not getting any free money from the government. But we also want to make it hard for them to get work here. So we need penalties for people that hire illegals. Okay, you know, so again, taking away the incentive from them to be here. So if they can't eat, they don't have a place to stay. If all they have is, if all they're being offered is a free bus ticket back over the Mexican border, they're going to take it. Okay, so we got to take away the incentive for them to be here and give them some incentive to get out of here. Okay, census. All right, let's talk about the census for a second. This is really important. We have to codify into law that illegals cannot be counted in the census, and this is a big thing because this is one of the reasons why these places like California, you know, want open borders, right? Because they let all these people come in over the border illegally, and then they're counted in the census, right? And what that does is that increases the number of people that they have in the House of Representatives, and it also increases their electoral votes. Okay, so we need to make it so that it is absolutely illegal for these people to be counted in a census. So now this is also going to motivate the Democrat states to get rid of them because they're now no longer getting a benefit by having them. Okay, if they keep them, they're basically paying for them out of pocket. They're not being counted in the census. They're not getting any federal funding for them. What are you going to do? They're going to want to get rid of them. Okay, so these are some ideas, right, for codifying into law some some migration reform to give incentive for these people to leave. Okay, so again, everything I said here, I'm telling you guys from the perspective of somebody that I think the term is first generation here, right? Because I was born here. My parents both immigrated into the United States back in the late 60s. But we definitely support Trump and his migration reform because two reasons I gave you guys. Number one, my family had to jump through lots of hoops to get here legally and to stay here and to become citizens, right? And number two, the more people that are here, right, the less resources are available for the rest of us, right? So like when my kids are in school, the last thing I want is a school that has twice as many students as it has now because that's less attention from my kids. Okay, so So less people is better. Okay, that's one of the reasons why I left New York for Pennsylvania, right? Because there's less people in Pennsylvania, so there's more resources available to me. Okay, so a couple of things for you guys to think about. Drop some comments below. Talk to you all soon.